You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 18.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robyn Jackson.
Hey builders, welcome back to season 2 of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robyn Jackson, and I am so excited to be back. I really missed you. Now, over the break, I spent a lot of time in schools, and I was talking with many of you and hearing your challenges as you try to transition from being a leader to being a builder. And all those conversations, well, they got me thinking. You see, the entire reason that I started this podcast was to provide you with, mini trainings that you could listen to on your commute or while you're working out, or if you're like me, while you're washing dishes or getting dressed in the morning. And I wanted to give you a really actionable kind of training option that you could listen to each week to help you make the shift from being a leader to being a builder. And yet, so many of you have told me that as much as you want to be a builder and that you try to be builders in your schools, there's just so many obstacles in your way. So I decided to make this season about how to turn your biggest obstacles into your biggest opportunities. After all, that's what builders do all the time. They look at an obstacle and they don't let it stop them from building the thing that they were called to build. Instead, they take that opportunity and they turn it into, they take that obstacle, see, Freudian slip there, they take that obstacle and they turn it into an opportunity. They don't even see it as an obstacle. I even slipped there and called it an opportunity when I meant to say an obstacle, because once you begin to think this way, like a builder, every obstacle becomes an opportunity. And so each week, this season, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a different obstacle that many of you may be facing right now, and I'm going to show you how to turn that obstacle into an opportunity that takes you closer and closer to your goals. Now, many of you have already shared some of the challenges that you're facing with me, but if you have an obstacle that you'd like to see me tackle in this podcast this season, well, I want you to send me a message on LinkedIn and let me know, what's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest obstacle that's keeping you, or that seems to be keeping you from making the switch from being a leader to being a builder? And then what I'll try to do is I'll try to address it on upcoming episodes. Now, for this episode, I want to talk in general about how builders turn their biggest obstacles into their biggest opportunities. And, I want to start out by admitting that that does sound a little bit like, a cliche or a platitude, the thing that you're supposed to say. Yes, I take my obstacles and I turn them into opportunities. I mean, it's a nice thought, but really they call an obstacle for a reason. It's something that's getting in the way of your reaching a goal. It's something that seems to be preventing you from achieving your success. I mean, let's think about some of the obstacles that you might be facing right now. You might be thinking about students who aren't coming to school, or parents who aren't being supportive, or students who are reading, 2, 3 grade levels below grade level, or, maybe you're facing an obstacle of a lack of funding or a lack of support for your program or for the goals that you're trying to reach, or stupid paperwork that you're required to complete, but doesn't feel like it has anything to do with the things that you're trying to do with your school, or maybe you're facing teachers who are ineffective or seem to be resistant to change, or maybe you're facing, kind of internal obstacles. You're not sure this is the work you've been called to do, or that this is the work you want to do for the rest of your life, or you feel stuck, or you don't have any time to get into classrooms because you're constantly putting out fires. And, I could go on and on and on. These are real obstacles. So how do you take these very real obstacles that so many of us are facing and create opportunities from them, especially when they feel so pervasive and they feel so overwhelming? Well, we're going to start by talking about that in general in today's episode. And then in each upcoming episode, I'm going to take some of those very obstacles that I just mentioned, and we're going to find out how we turn each and every one of them into an opportunity. Now, before I dive in, I have something really, really exciting to share with you. If you've been in the MindSteps universe for a while, then you already know that every single year we host an amazing 3-day intensive called Builders Lab. Well, I am excited and happy to tell you that tickets for Builders Lab 2019 are now on sale. In fact, if you purchase your tickets before October 17th, 2018, then you can take advantage of an early bird ticket price and you can save $100 off your ticket. Now, for those of you who don't know what Builders Lab is, it's only the best professional development intensive on the planet. Now, I'm not even exaggerating. And the reason it's so amazing is because when you come to Builders Lab, we're going to ask you to bring the biggest challenge that you're facing right now as a builder. So that might be anything from, you got to raise test scores, or you are working with resistant teachers, or you have a toxic culture, or you can't seem to find time to get into classrooms, or you're giving teachers feedback, but it's not working, or your school is really missing core values. And because of that, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. Whatever that challenge is, we're going to spend 3 days working on it. And the way we're going to work on that challenge is I'm going to show you how to apply the 4 disciplines of buildership to your specific challenge. So we're going to talk about how you can face that challenge by using feedback and support and accountability and culture. And then here's the really amazing part. The 3rd day, we spend the entire afternoon implementing what you've learned the prior 2 days so that when you go back to your school, you will have a 90-day plan designed to to eliminate that challenge once and for all. And here's the thing. We keep Builders Lab really, really small so that I have a chance to work with each and every one of you personally and give you my personal attention as we work on your challenge. Plus, I've written a Builder's Manual, and, people fight over this. People who can't come to Builders Lab, they write me and ask, can I just buy the book? Because it has over 100 pages of resources and templates and worksheets and exemplars to give you everything that you need to take everything that you learn in Builders Lab back to your school and immediately apply it. By the time you return to your school, you will have already made progress because this isn't just theory. We're actually giving you practical things that you can apply immediately. So this is not your typical education conference, and there's not a whole bunch of disconnected keynote speeches and breakout sessions. No, this is a small, intimate event where you and I spend 3 days together solving your biggest challenges. I give you personalized attention, and you're going to develop a personalized, detailed action plan for exactly how you're going to implement what you've learned the moment you return to your school. Now, I need to warn you, we've already sold about 30% of the tickets for Builders Lab 2019, and we just opened ticket sales. So you're going to need to act fast because I believe that this year we are going to sell out. So you need to go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab, and there's no apostrophe S. So it's Builders, BUILDERS-lab right now to get more information and to get your ticket. And remember, the early bird ticket price expires October 17, 2018. All right, so let's dive into the content for today. So a lot of people I've noticed talk to me in wishes. They say things like, well, I wish I could get into more classrooms, or I wish I had a more rigorous instructional program, or I wish I could move up in the ranks and do something more with my career, or I wish I could raise test scores, and it goes on and on. And every time I hear a wish, I think to myself, well, here's someone who's allowed his or her obstacles to choke out their dreams. Now, that may sound harsh, right? Because a lot of the obstacles that many of you are facing, they're very real and they're very pressing and they can seem so insurmountable. So it may seem easy for me to sit back and say, oh, well, you're just allowing your obstacles to get in the way of your dreams. But hear me out, because the difference between a leader and a builder is that a leader sees obstacles as things that are keeping them from getting them where they want to be. But builders well, they look at obstacles differently. They don't negate that the obstacle is challenging. They don't do the Pollyanna thing and say, oh, whatever it is, I'll overcome it. What they do is they see the obstacle for what it is. They're realistic about that obstacle. But builders look at every obstacle and they don't look at it as a reason that's going to keep them from their dreams or their goals. When they see an obstacle, they say, you know what? There's an opportunity buried somewhere in that obstacle. And if I find the opportunity, this could be the biggest opportunity of my career. And so they look at opportunities. I did it again because I see, whenever I see an obstacle, I look at it as an opportunity, but they look at obstacles. That's what I'm trying to say. They look at obstacles as unique opportunities that will ultimately help them achieve their goals. So let me give you an example. I'm going to talk about two different schools that I was working with. There are two different principals in the same district and I was working with, and they basically had the same demographics. They served similar neighborhoods. They had essentially the same resources and they worked for the same superintendent. And here's the big thing. They both were failing schools. So one year, the school district mandated that they had to raise their test scores or else they were going to be taken over by the state. And so both of the principals, they sat down with their leadership team. They looked at what they needed to do. They both needed to make at least, somewhere between a 15-20% gain that year to stay out of state takeover. And that's big, especially when in the past, the biggest gains that most of them had made were, 3-7%. And so this was a huge leap for them. So both schools were facing similar challenges, and the students were generally reading at between 1 to 3 grade levels below grade level. They seemed kind of apathetic to academics. The parents were, for, various reasons, not as involved as the school would have liked to see them involved in their children's education. One of the big ones was the parents didn't generally read to their students at home, and they didn't get a lot of parent participation at their parent nights or their back to school nights or their PTA meetings. The teachers were really overwhelmed with classroom management issues, just getting the kids settled down. They really felt uncomfortable with the reading curriculum in general. They were doing this, all teachers are reading teachers. And so some of the teachers were really struggling, especially when reading wasn't their area. And, the other thing was that both schools had, to some degree, pretty toxic cultures. They were both kind of controlled by their union reps in the school, and the teachers in general were pretty resistant to any kind of feedback from the administrators. It was kind of a us versus them mentality. So this was happening in both schools. There were nuances in their differences, but basically both schools were dealing with this. So one principal, what he decided to do was that he decided to gather his leadership team. And after looking at all the obstacles that I just mentioned, he decided that what they needed to do is broaden the professional development program and hire an outside coach to come in and work with the teachers. And then he also decided to buy a new reading curriculum to try to bolster the scores. And then he sent letters home to the parents in multiple languages, encouraging them to read to their students for at least a half an hour every single night. And then he doubled down on his observations in classrooms. He gave teachers tons of feedback, and he sat in on teacher planning meetings to make sure that they were staying on track and that they were following the curriculum. And so they did all of this, and then they began to drill the students, especially the closer they got to the test date. They started drilling kids, and they devoted more instructional time to preparing students for the test. And they had pep rallies to get the students excited. And on the day of the test, they fed kids breakfast. And when the scores came back, well, he had actually made almost a 20% jump in scores. And they were so ecstatic. They had a big party, a big celebration, because they had achieved these huge gains. The trouble is, the very next year, they went back to business as usual. And next year, when the scores came in, they realized they had lost most of the gains that they had achieved the prior year. So that's school number one. Now, school number two did things a little differently, because instead of just jumping in to solve the problem, they spent a lot of time that summer really examining the problem. Remember, they still had some of the same obstacles, right? So the students were generally reading between 1 to 3 grade levels below grade level. They seemed apathetic to academics. The parents were, not involved, and they didn't read to their kids at home generally. They weren't participating in the school-sponsored parent nights to kind of show them how to read to their kids at home. The teachers were really overwhelmed with classroom management issues. The teachers weren't really comfortable with the reading curriculum as well. Their toxic culture had been pervasive for years, and there was this us versus them mentality. The teachers union kind of ran the school, and the administrators, kind of kowtowed to the teachers union on a lot of issues. But this school had recently been, taken over by a tribe of builders. The leadership team had turned over, and so they did things a little differently. They took a long, hard look at their obstacles, and they tried to find the hidden opportunities in each obstacle. So first, the big obstacle that they tackled first was they had to deal with the fact that their students were reading 1 to 3 grade levels below reading level. And the goal was to get them on grade level, or get as many of them on grade level as possible. And they had to do it by that spring. So right away, they knew that they were not going to get everybody on grade level that year. But they asked themselves, what would have to happen in order to get every single student on grade level? And then they allow themselves to dream. Now, that's an interesting question, isn't it? We right now, it seems impossible, but what would have to happen in order for that to be possible? And so they just went for broke. They started daydreaming. They came up with things like, well, we'd have to spend a large part of the day on reading, or we'd need a fairy godmother to touch each child. So they were just brainstorming everything that they could come up with and allowing them to imagine what would have to happen. What would it take? Well, after brainstorming for a while, they began to ask themselves another question. Why are so many students performing below grade level? And it was an interesting question. And after some discussion and some digging into the data, they realized that most of the students were pretty good with word recognition, but many struggled with reading comprehension. So they began to focus their efforts not on everything, but on the one thing that would give them the biggest gains, which was reading comprehension. And so instead of buying a new reading curriculum, they just took the curriculum that they had and they focused on the parts of the curriculum that dealt with reading comprehension. And then the in-school instructional coach started researching best reading comprehension strategies, and she focused all of her PD and her support on all of those. She tried to help them figure out how to help students develop those reading comprehension skills, even when they weren't reading in reading class, even when they were in social studies or when they were in science or in other subject areas. She still focused on reading comprehension. So in that way, everybody became a reading teacher without having to learn and master the reading the whole reading curriculum. Okay, so the next obstacle was parent apathy. So again, they asked themselves, why are parents seeming so apathetic? And at first, they did the, kind of typical thing. They thought, well, this is a low-income neighborhood. Our parents are probably working 2 jobs, and so they don't have time to really read to their kids in the evening. But when they investigated a little further, they realized that wasn't true. Most of the parents worked 1 job. So what was really going on? Well, they decided to visit the neighborhoods after school and find out for themselves. So once a month, they'd pick a day after school and they would take ice cream to a different neighborhood, and they would set up on a busy block. They'd hand out free ice cream sandwiches to the kids and to their parents, right before dinner time. And then they would take out a soccer ball and kick it around with the kids, or a basketball and shoot a few hoops with the kids, or they'd take out a double dutch rope and jump with the kids, and the kids would come out and then the parents would come out. And while they were doing all of this, they just talked to the parents and they talked to them about how important it was to read with their children. And they started asking questions. Why aren't parents reading with their kids? And it wasn't in a judgmental way. They were just trying to find out information. Well, here's what they found out. They found out that a lot of homes didn't have books. And so the parents didn't have a book to read with the kids. And, even when they sent a book home, sometimes the parents weren't comfortable reading to their students. And so what they did is they worked with the local library to create a bookmobile, and the bookmobile would go into the communities each week and they would offer a selection of books. And they created a book list that parents could choose from to read with their students, and a list of questions that they could ask at the end of the reading to work with their children on reading comprehension. And although they went out into the community to gather information, they also, here was the kind of unintended consequence, while they were doing all this information gathering and trying to serve their communities better, they actually managed to form a bond with parents, and that's helped parents get more involved with the school because they saw the school as this really threatening place. But when they went out into the community and they saw that school wasn't as threatening as they thought, well, the parents decided maybe school's not so bad after all. So when they invited parents in for different parent trainings or conferences or meetings, they started getting more parent participation. Now, the next obstacle was classroom management. And this was because many of the kids were really disruptive. They had a real issue with students getting into fights. And so that meant that the teachers didn't let students move a lot in the classrooms, and even on the playground or every time they let kids move, they were always they spent a lot of time breaking up fights because the fights would break out during those transitions in the hallway or in the classroom or on the playground at recess. So again, they started by looking at the classroom management issue and asking themselves what would have to happen for classroom management to no longer be an issue. And so they found out that, most of the disruptions were happening during transitions. So they did some professional development around managing transitions better and gave the teachers a few more strategies. But here's what else they did. They also ramped up their discipline procedures so that if a child was sent to the office, they could still work on their reading comprehension while they were sitting in the office waiting to see an administrator or while they were in detention. And the big thing they did was they instituted a new character education program to teach students how to better manage conflict. And that cut down on a lot of the fights significantly. Plus, the teachers were also improving their instructional practice. So they found that they didn't have as many disciplinary issues because the kids were more engaged, because they were doing better in the classroom instructionally. So the next obstacle they tackled was the toxic culture. And they realized that in order to overcome that, they were going to have to work with the union and not against the union. So they invited the union rep to be a part of some of their brainstorming meetings and help them come up with solutions to some of the other obstacles that they were facing. And one of the obstacles that they were facing was they needed more time to work with some students who were really struggling. And the administrators wanted teachers to work with students after school, but the union and a lot of the teachers really balked at this idea because it was infringing upon their duty day. So the admin team sat down with the union rep and they worked together to come up with another solution. And what they ended up doing was instituting a proactive intervention cycle that helped teachers intervene with struggling students early and to do it in the school day, in the classroom. And then in exchange, teachers committed to making better use of their instructional time in order to give students the support that they needed. And that ended up working really, really well. But here's the unintended result of all of this collaboration. What it did was it overcame a lot of distrust and a lot of wariness that had been a part of the culture for so long, and that it kind of fed some of the toxicity in the culture. Now, instead of working against the union, they were working together with the union, and they got a lot of union support. Now, here's the end result. School B made almost 20% gains in test scores the first year. But here's the difference. Because they kept up with those changes that they made, they continued to make test score gains year after year after year and went from being one of the worst performing schools in the district to being one of the best performing schools in the district in the space of 3 years. Now, what was the difference? Well, you might talk about the techniques and the strategies, and those did make a difference, but here's the big difference. The big difference is that School A looked at their obstacles as obstacles, and they did their best to deal with them, so they made superficial changes, but they didn't make cultural shifts because all they were trying to do is move the obstacle. And as a result, they came up with these short-term solutions that kind of worked, and they tried to work around the obstacle, but they never removed the obstacle. They never transformed the obstacle. Well, School B, they took each obstacle and they used that obstacle as an opportunity to make a lasting improvement in their school. I mean, just look at the opportunities that they created to improve their instructional program, to reach out to families, to get more involved, to turn the relationship with the union from being something that's really antagonistic to something that's really collaborative, and to creatively address discipline issues and permanently alter their students' performance. So that's what happens when you look for opportunities in every obstacle. You find ways to be creative. You consider alternatives that didn't even occur to you before the obstacle occurred, and you discover new ways to look at old problems. And this is the important part, to solve those problems for good. And I see builders doing this all the time. For instance, I recently met with a group of really incredible educators who found that one of the biggest obstacles to their success was that often they were one or two or one of only a few African American educators and one of only a few females in leadership positions in their schools. That's an obstacle. But instead of lamenting the lack of support and community that they face, they decided to create their very own PLC where they could support each other. And as a result, they've not only created this safe community where they support and they challenge each other and they cheer each other on, but they have marshaled their collective expertise and passion to create this semi-annual conference on transformational leadership that, in my opinion, is one of the best educational conferences in the country right now. So they took that obstacle of being isolated and alone, and they turned it into this opportunity to create this thriving community and to leverage the collective intelligence of that community to create this transformational education conference. Now their careers, all of them, their careers are flying, not because they're working together on their careers, but because they have practiced this idea of turning obstacles into opportunities. Another example is that there's a private school principal that I recently worked with, and she was newly hired just weeks before the accreditation committee was going to return to her school for an evaluation. Now, the prior principal, the one that she replaced, had done nothing to prepare. And with only 3 weeks away from the evaluation, she was scrambling to get 3 years worth of work accomplished and get it done on time. Now, because of the close deadline, she was going to have to work really hard. She was going to have to marshal her team to work really hard. And again, big obstacle. But instead of panicking, here's what she decided to do. She got the team working really hard, and they, as a result of coming together and working on this, have a renewed passion for what they do, for their core values, for their mission. They've come up with some, really incredible things as a result of that. But here's the other thing. As a result of kind of working together, they didn't have time to create the fancy accreditation notebooks that normally, you would give the accreditation committee because they were working right up to the wire. So here's what she did. That's an obstacle. Here's how she turned it into an opportunity. She decided that instead of creating notebooks, she would load all of the documents onto tablets so that when the accreditation committee came to visit, they could look at that, all that material that would normally be in the notebook on tablets, and she could walk them through. They were hyperlinked. So instead of spending all that money and time tabulating notebooks and getting them perfect, she loaded one Google document onto a tablet. The accreditation committee came. They are so impressed because they're given these tablets. They can scroll through. They can go back. They can mark it up. They can hyperlink. And she used those tablets to make a case for why the school needed to really receive additional funding for technology, because the power of those tablets, she wanted to put that in the hands of every student. And so she was able to not only wow the accreditation committee, but she was also able to make a really strong case for how they needed to get extra funding to be able to purchase tablets for every student in the school. She took an obstacle and she turned it into an opportunity. I have one more story for you. An assistant principal that I worked with recently, and she was serving under a really ineffective principal who undermined her at every single chance. It's a huge obstacle, right? But instead of complaining about her boss, what she did is she figured out a way to figure out how to do the work that he liked least. And it turned out that he really hated visiting classrooms and giving teachers feedback. So she took on that role in the school for him and really honed her feedback skills. And also, because she was always in the classrooms and she was giving teachers such amazing feedback, she won the trust of the teaching staff and was able to really significantly impact the teaching and learning in her instructional program. Well, the next year, her boss was removed from the school, and guess who got made the new principal? She did. That's because she turned an obstacle into an opportunity. So these are just a few examples of what I've seen just this week. And I'll tell you something else. Some of the biggest things that I've created in my career are the direct results of turning an obstacle into an opportunity. For instance, I used to be a high school English teacher, and I was just, completely overwhelmed by all of the grading that I had to do. I mean, I wanted to give my students really good feedback, but it took so long and they didn't read my comments or hardly read my comments anyway. So I felt like I was wasting my time. And one day I was staring at this stack of papers and I was dreading grading them. And I saw them as this huge obstacle to what I really wanted to accomplish with my students. But I decided to figure out, how do I turn this obstacle into an opportunity? How could I give students better feedback with less time? And that's how I created the color-coded grading system, which has helped hundreds of teachers really give students meaningful feedback, and it helped my students' writing soar. I never would have created that had I not looked at that obstacle of grading those papers and tried to find the opportunity in there. And here's another one. I had a lot of kids who were really struggling, and I was working with them during lunch and after school, and I was spending a lot of time working with them one-on-one. And, a lot of them were still failing. And what's more, by the time they came to me for help, many of them were already in this free fall of failure, and there wasn't much I could do to help them. So I did a lot of research and tried to figure out, how do I turn this obstacle into an opportunity? And that's how I started using the student success plan. And don't worry, I'll put a link to the plan in the show notes in case you're interested. But anyway, I created that plan as a result of that obstacle. And I went from several students failing each semester to no students failing. You heard me. 0 students started failing after I started using that student success plan. But I would have never been driven to create it had I not faced the obstacle of so many students struggling and not having the time to work with the students that I needed to work. Here's one more. I started an AP program at my school, but the problem was that most of my students were really underprepared for AP level work. So big obstacle, right? Because you have this AP test and it's really rigorous. And I have kids who, a lot of my kids have not even had an honors class. So big obstacle. But what it forced me to do was it forced me to change the way that I taught. And in the process, I ended up developing a way to help traditionally underrepresented students or underprepared students access and be successful with rigorous instruction. And that's how I came up with what is now called our Rigor Blueprint. And guess what? That obstacle turned into one of the biggest opportunities of my entire career. In the short term, it helped me triple AP enrollment. It increased our average scores. But then it also helped me in the long term, because when I started MindSteps, one of the first things we offered was this rigor training and this rigor blueprint. And it's helped thousands of teachers really help underprepared students access more rigorous instruction. And it's also helped thousands of teachers help struggling students access and be successful with rigorous instruction. Huge opportunity. I mean, even as an administrator, I faced several obstacles that I turned into opportunities. Once I struggled to get into classrooms and give teachers meaningful feedback. And that obstacle turned into my creating microslicing to be able to get into more classrooms more quickly and to give teachers that really laser focused feedback that helps them to really move their practice forward. So I'm not telling you all of this to brag. I would just want you to know that for me, some of the biggest obstacles in my career have led to some of my biggest opportunities. And it's not because I'm this amazing person or anything. It's just because early on, I chose to adopt the mindset that inside of every obstacle is an opportunity. And you can do the same thing. I mean, no matter what obstacle you're facing right now, I guarantee you that if you look at it, you can find a huge opportunity buried somewhere inside. So I want to encourage you today to stop letting your obstacles keep you from your goals, because inside of every obstacle is an opportunity if you know how to look for it. A lot of us right now are on the verge of something really miraculous, really magnificent, really amazing. We're right there on the verge. And the thing that we think is keeping us from getting there is the obstacle. But that obstacle is the very thing that can help you do the amazing, wonderful thing that you were called to do. So we've got to look at our obstacles differently, because I believe that so many of us are cheating ourselves from making the difference that we truly want to make because we let the obstacle stop us, rather than taking that obstacle, figuring out how to turn it on its head and use it as a real opportunity for growth. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at some of the obstacles that you're facing right now. And I want you to ask yourself, is there any way that what seems like a bad thing right now might turn into a good thing sometime in the future? Or in other words, Where's the opportunity? How can I use this challenge to make my school better? How can I use this obstacle to make me better? How can I take this thing that seems to be kind of, dragging my career down and turn it into the biggest, best career move of my entire life? How can I take this huge obstacle that seemed to be keeping my school from being the great school that I know it could be and turn it into a huge opportunity to immediately, rocket my school to the top of the heap? So that's part of a builder's superpower. They never look at a roadblock and see an insurmountable problem. Instead, they realize that the obstacle in the path becomes the path. They don't try to avoid challenges. That's what bosses do. They don't even try to solve challenges. That's what leaders do. Builders are always working to transform challenges, and they transform them into new opportunities that they wouldn't have had they not faced the challenge in the first place. Remember, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve your condition and improve your school. So this week, I want to challenge you to look at your current obstacles differently. And instead of seeing your challenges as something that limits your ability to reach your goals, I want you to ask yourself, where's the opportunity here? How can I turn this challenge on its head and create an opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise? Now, we're going to be talking about how to turn your biggest obstacles into your biggest opportunities all season long. So if you're facing an obstacle and you can't seem to figure it out or how to get around it, then let me know by sending me a message in LinkedIn, and let me know what your biggest obstacle is in that message right now, and maybe I'll tackle it on an upcoming show. I'm certainly going to be doing that for a lot of some of the really common quote-unquote obstacles that many of us may be facing right now, because inside of everyone is an opportunity, and I want you to be able to see that. So if you have a challenge that you're facing, you can't figure it out, just hit me up in LinkedIn and let me know, and I'll be happy to try to tackle it on a future show. And if we're not friends on LinkedIn yet, I don't know what to tell you. It's been 18 episodes by now. You should stop making me beg. Go ahead, find me on LinkedIn under Robyn Jackson with Mind Steps, and let's be friends so that we can continue the conversation offline. Now, before we go, I want to just remind you about today's sponsor, Builders Lab 2019, where we're going to spend 3 days taking you step by step and showing you exactly how to remove your biggest obstacle once and for all so that you can achieve your school goals. Don't forget that the early bird registration is going on right now, and you can save $100 off of your ticket price if you purchase your ticket by October 17, 2018. So for more information, go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Now, next week, we're going to start by tackling a huge obstacle that many school leaders face: meetings. If you are sick and tired of unproductive meetings that drag on and on and on, and everybody sits around celebrating problems, but nothing gets resolved at the end of the meeting, or if you make commitments as a team in a meeting and then nobody follows up or does anything once the meeting's over, or if you have a big problem right now, you really want to get people together to solve it, but every time you pull people together to solve it, people just end up complaining and nothing gets accomplished. Well, this is the episode for you, because I'm going to share with you the most powerful way to run a meeting and actually see action happen from that meeting. And you're going to learn how to do it all and run your meetings like a builder. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by Mind Steps, Inc., where we build master teachers.